work has better ideas than I do. And that's like my core belief in my studio practice, is that showing up and doing that work and following and paying attention. Among the various things I've been doing with the figure over the years is always putting figures in some kind of a relationship to ground, to earth. And for whatever reason, I have been moving the figures into the strange kind of limbo of the suspension of the figurative moment. There's this first work called Suspended Figure, and the figure is sort of pulling on this line that vanishes off to these two vanishing points out to the side. And so for lots of people, that was pure futile struggle in the middle of the air. There's no way to bring any kind of closure to the narrative except for maybe catastrophe. There's necessarily this narrative dynamic in it, and the narrative begs the question of how do we come to be here? How does this figure even come to be in this strange predicament? When I first started talking about the possibility of doing anything in the public square, I did some writing musing on the upturned hand as this microcosm of the public square, holding this object in your hand and pondering what could you do there, what could you posit. It's this journey from this private reflection to finding out if your work does anything, what it does, what its relevance might be. This piece is a kind of an inversion of some of those formulae that I've worked with. It's a beautiful artifact. There was the pursuit of it being kind of beautiful. Something beautiful, of course, has to have a strangeness to it as well, to be compelling, to remain compelling. Yeah, my father was an Anglican minister, and he was more poet than preacher. His speaking style was always like watching a high wire act. You could sense the precariousness of his footing as he was advancing towards what you did not know. There's one early work in particular that it's a piece called Speak, and it was a look at what it might actually mean to choose that vocational path. It was a contemplation on partly the audacity of presuming to have anything to say. It could be that something in his personal style sort of gave me some confidence towards just stepping out into that unknown. So I like to joke that among the many defects I inherited from my father, a bad heart valve was one of them. So I went through the surgery and then was spending time doing my rehab. As a patient in that space, you necessarily have some time to wait. It's like this amphitheater, and we are all the audience. And all we have, in a way, is to look across this empty stage. And so I wanted to do something to inhabit it. Early encouragements about this idea, this image, and this theme was that some of the health professionals there had said, well, we really talk to the patients using the metaphor of journey. And so that was just an affirmation of the rightness of this piece. Given the kind of trauma that the piece has to go through for mold making and casting, and then there's this, transference over into this other material that you can bring the clay to life, and then you have to relinquish it to the next processes and then kind of bring it back to resuscitate it, I guess. So this particular material has this sort of plaster-like quality to it, where you can work back down, etch back down into the surfaces and bring some of those sort of subtler considerations of the flow of the an intersection of the various volumes involved. There's this record of time and process and contemplation that actually is, you know, you want to reach for a word like incarnated into the work, into the process. I think it's that outward glance. That figure is looking out beyond the space, in a sense. And that counterpoint of that there is clearly, there's motion and energy implied in the work, and the figure still has this kind of calm. I've heard more than once people really moved by the sense of agency in that hand on the tiller, the sense of personal agency. That's a thing that's one of the things potentially that has been sort of taken from you in a journey, in a medical journey of that kind. Even in witnessing other people's engagement with the artwork, it really radically changes your own experience of standing in that space. You're no longer looking in on each other's private moments, but you are looking together as an audience at this work as it slowly ascends and descends and slowly turns into space. When we received back here at the studio feedback from, you know, people's written responses to the work, as an artist, you can't actually do the work looking always for this external validation. But, you know, 30 years in now, doing this kind of a piece like that and getting that kind of feedback, it is, yeah, it's an affirmation that it's, you know, maybe it's all had some kind of value.